Right. Hello, everyone. Miranda, we are getting started now.
Hello.
Hi. So welcome, everyone, to this month's Forward Ladies in Conversation with webinars. And this is a session where I, myself, Griselda Togobo, sits down with a woman who inspires me to talk around leadership and their leadership experience. And really just to showcase the different kinds of leaders we have out there doing fabulous work. So this week, we have the pleasure of having the fantastic Dr. Miranda Brawn with us. Miranda and I met on a tube one rainy day in London. And it just turned out, she was sat across from me on the tube. It turned out that she went to primary school with my husband. We got talking and it just turned into this relationship that has since then led me to find out more about what she does and, you know, the contribution she really is making. Now, I'm sure you've read her bio, so I'm not going to spend time reading that, but I'm so delighted that Miranda made the time to be with us here today. Miranda, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be part of this platform.
Thank you. So tell us, where are you dialing in from? What's the lockdown situation?
So I'm dialing in from London. Lockdown situations like everyone else. I'm staying in the house. I'm being good. I'm following the rules. So, you know, just being productive, trying to stay positive, and I can't wait for this lockdown to end.
I can't wait as well. I mean, I love my family and I love my children, yeah. But there gets a point where you just want to get out and go and do something different. So yeah, I think we are all really, it's challenging times for everybody mentally and physically, but I'm also very grateful that we are still here having this conversation because I know a lot of people are not having the opportunity to do that. Yeah. So let's start with a bit of a background. So I know you've had a very unconventional journey to where you are now. Do you want to just share a very potted history of that?
Yes, very unconventional. I started banking when I was 18, and it was through my mother's friend who owned an agency, got a job interview, got a job working for a bank, worked my way up. At the time, I realised that I needed a degree, so I started juggling full-time banking work with the degree, and I eventually got the degree, got my MBA. Always wanted to be a lawyer. So back when I was at school, 14 years old, wanted to be a lawyer when I was at school with your husband, Mike,
yes.
Who's now an NHS doctor. So I think that deserves a round of applause.
Yes, it does.
But you know, I juggled both, and I always wanted to get into the front office, and I eventually got there. I didn't give up, and I became a sales trader. I've worked for the top banks: Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, HSBC. Then eventually qualified to be a barrister. Ended up leading derivatives and financial regulations for an investment bank in the city. While doing that, juggling, launching a charity, but also lots of board work as well. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, and we have a new guest that's joined us.
I know, she didn't waste time at all.
Mommy. Well, yes, you know what? I think Forward Ladies, we need to start young, so why not?
Right. Yes, I'm coming, okay. Can you give me 2 seconds? Keep talking, because if I don't sort this out now, we're going to have a problem during the call.
Right. Talking about
keep. Yes, I'll be back. Let's go.
This is a bit like when you're on TV and you've got 2 minutes to fill. So basically, I worked my way up. Always wanted to be the barrister. So I also launched my consultancy company. One of the things I mentioned was that I wanted to be a sales trader. I wanted to be in the front office. So I finally got there when I worked for a top US investment bank, got into the front office, and then I ended up working for another global investment bank as a sales trader. And after doing that for 10 years, I still had that burning ambition to become a lawyer. And so while I was on the trading floor, starting work at 7 a.m.
Sorry, I'm back.
just telling them about how I used to start work I used to start at 7 a.m. in the morning, taking clients out 3 nights a week, going to law school at the weekends, but then I qualified, launched my legal consultancy company, also started my first board role, which is nearly 10 years ago, working for a charity. And that's how the portfolio career commenced. And someone said, can you come on stage and talk to this University of London students about your journey? I did not think, number one, I had a story. And number two, I thought, well, okay, I'm sure I can find 10 minutes maybe to talk about my story. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, so Miranda, you make it sound so simple, but when we had an earlier conversation, you basically said for 12 years you had been studying. So you got your first degree, got your master's for 12 years every evening.
I started when I was 18, and it was not easy. So if that's how it's coming across, no, it was not easy. But I think when you're in your 20s and early 30s, you got the energy, or at least I did. I had the energy, the hunger, the drive, the ambition, and I wanted to get there. So not only was I working full-time for an investment bank, for the top investment banks that do long hours, but I was studying 2 nights a week with exams. I made sacrifices, and it's really important, to acknowledge that I made sacrifices. So when friends were going partying or going on holiday, my money was going into my education. It was going into investing in property, and that's what I did. I can recall to this very day a friend saying to me on a summer Saturday afternoon, do you want to come to this barbecue? A friend pulled up in a Jeep, music blaring, and I had the choice between saying, yes, I'll come to the barbecue, or no, I've got accounts to do. And I said, no, I've got accounts to do. And it was like, okay. And I can still see them now driving off. And I said to myself, one day this will pay off. And it has. So, it's been a struggle. I'm not even going to blasé this and say it's been easy, because it has not been easy. But I also think when you're younger, you have the energy, and I had the energy. So not only was I working, studying, but I still had the social life. So I literally lived on no or minimum sleep. But I think when you're younger, you can do that. But I'm all about well-being now. I'm all about getting your 7-8 hours sleep. I'm all about how do you look after yourself, because that's the most important thing, especially in current times.
Yes. So hitting on the current times point, we're living in times where I think because of the length of the lockdown and potentially the changes we're going to have to our living life after Corona, it's going to take a lot of resilience and grit for people to get back to where they were, if at all. It will be a new normal. From your experience with being very resilient, because I know the dream you had at that time didn't pan out the way you wanted to, and you had to reimagine and re-envision a new life for yourself. So you went and became
better than what I could have. What I could have dreamt, it's even better than that. It's bigger and better, and that's the key. That is the key to this. It's about visualization. I'm a big fan of the law of attraction, and I could not even imagine when I think about me 18 to now, I could not even imagine the journey. And I think that's what makes it so fun. That's what makes the unconventional journey more fun than following the normal route.
So of course. And I think a lot of us are going to have to do that, because what is normal is not going to be available after
anymore.
Yes.
So
yeah, you go on.
No, I was just going to say, it's going to be interesting to see what is life going to be like post COVID-19. And it's funny because I had an interview with Vanessa Feltz. I went on her London BBC radio breakfast show, and it was around the 6th, 7th of February, and we had a chat about COVID. I could choose the stories, and COVID back then was something where 8 people in the UK had been affected, and no one had died yet. 2 of the infected were doctors, and I can recall saying to her, but I just feel like the government needs to give us more direction. I said to her, Boris Johnson is saying to us, stay confident, stay calm, wash your hands. But I was giving her statistics, because whenever I go on TV or radio, I do my homework. And I researched COVID, I researched everything. And the WHO, the the World Health Organization, they were saying that this is going to be a global threat to the economy. And I said this talking to her, I said, you know, these other countries in lockdown, and her response was, what, are you expecting us all not to go to school, not to do this, not to do that? I think all we need to do is wash our hands. And for me, I just feel that in light of everything, in terms of the evidence that we had before, it's an interesting situation that we're now in.
Yeah. So
hopefully, on a positive note, you know, there's lots of lessons to be learned, but on a positive note, I'm hoping that once this situation, once lockdown is over, the world will be a better place. And I'm already finding that. Like when I do go, and the only time I leave my house is to buy essentials, and I'm just finding that people are nicer, people are more politer, people just seem to be a bit more caring, and there's no road rage. And I'm sure
road rage. Yes.
No road rage. Well, number one, probably because there's not many cars out. But number two, I think everyone just is having time to look at themselves. You know, they're having time to reflect and actually think about, well, what is going on, not only within the world, but what is going on within my world, and what changes can I make for the better, or at least optimistically, that's what I'm hoping. Well, at least that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So Miranda, I want to touch back on your career. So I know you had success on I wouldn't say Wall Street, but in the city, and it is not a space that is very female dominated. So it's a male dominated space, and you don't fit the stereotype of somebody who works in the city. How did you make yourself relevant in the city, and how have you survived when others haven't?
Very good question. I mean, for me, it was being authentic, and it was being genuine. I mean, that's just who I am. And I can recall when I first started working in the city, and I can recall working for, what I don't like to do is mention names. So when I worked for, at the time, a top US investment bank, and do you know when people talk about the imposter syndrome? I don't really get imposter syndrome, but when I first started banking and when I first started working in the city, after 2 years, and then I started working for a big US investment bank, I had the imposter syndrome for the first time in my life. And that was when I was sitting next to a lawyer. I was the youngest. I was working with people who had master's degrees, who had gone to Oxford and Cambridge. And I can just remember that moment where I was like, oh my God, like, you know, they're talking about going to private clubs in Chelsea and Mayfair, and it was a completely new world for me, because I'm born and raised in East London, Leytonstone, and I'm very proud of that fact. And so for me, it was a complete new world. And I can recall just thinking, oh my God, like, will I be found out? And that, I mean, literally, I'm a very confident person. I was raised to be a very happy, confident individual. But that was the time when I can recall calling my mum at lunchtime saying, oh my God, Mum, I think I'm going to be found out. And, you know, of course I wasn't, because I was deserving of that place and I was myself. And I think it's really important. One of the things that I illustrate is the importance of having your voice, the importance of being an individual, and the importance of diversity. And that's what it's all about, whether it's a diverse background, what you look like, whether you're male or female, whatever that might be, personality-wise, ideas, that's what matters. How did I handle it, and how did I become relevant? Well, I just worked really hard. You know, I worked really hard, and I didn't take no for an answer. So when I did want to make the transition, because when I first started investment banking, I started in the operation part of banking. And then after 6 months to a year, I realized there was a front office. It took me 10 years, from 18 to 28. It took me 10 years to make that transition into the front office. But I did it. And one of the things that I did was I didn't give up. I didn't take the word no as an answer. I was resilient. I think those are really key aspects, but I also networked. And so I developed a network. And one of the things I did was I eliminated any negativity, any negative company in my area. I eliminated that, and I just focused purely on how can I achieve my goal? You know, and I surrounded myself with like-minded individuals. And I'm sure all the lovely, fabulous ladies out there listening can hopefully relate to that, where it's really important when people talk about your network and the 5 people that you spend the most time with, all of that is really important in terms of helping you to succeed and to achieve what you want to achieve within your career journey.
So that's how you survive, your network and never taking no for an answer, and then overcoming imposter syndrome.
But I'm also from East London, you know, so we're made of tough stuff.
You're a tough girl from East London.
I'm a tough cookie. And it's funny because I've had so many managers that have said to me, you know, you're, I can't remember the expression now, but like, what is it? Thick boots, like you're tough, you know. I am thick-skinned. I'm very thick-skinned. I can't remember what the exact expression is right now that they used to use, but the expression is that I'm strong and I don't take any nonsense. And also, I was a tomboy, so growing up, even though I might have been, you know, girly in some respects, I was a tomboy. And so for me, going to work in a male-dominated environment, it didn't faze me. Hand on heart, it didn't faze me one bit, because also when you come from East London, there's banter. You know, I grew up going to a primary school, especially where, I mean, my secondary school, where your husband and I also went to, it was predominantly, you know, it was predominantly a white school, and we were one of the very few faces of colour. But the junior school was very mixed, and so there were dancing competitions. You know, that's when back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, where people were break dancing, there were cussing matches, and that's where, you know, if anyone tried anything, you would have to put them in their place. And all of this, I truly believe that if you look at your foundation, you look at where you come from, you can take all the goodness out of that, and that can help prepare you for your future journey. And that's what I did.
I love that you talk about your foundation and being able to transfer all that positivity from it, because I listen to people who look at where they're coming from and their background, and all they see is that is what is holding them back. But it's so important that listening to a girl from East London who had the same opportunities as all the other girls in the area, or even less, some may say, that you've been able to tell yourself a different story that has enabled you to achieve what you've achieved. And that's something I'm so passionate about.
I have to correct you there. I wouldn't even say even less, because my mother, who's the one that opened the door for me with the network, my mother was a lawyer when she left the city, and my mother was one of the very first Black women with an office in the city in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. And she was the one who was my first mentor, literally, I guess, from a baby. But she was the one who guided me. And so growing up in East London, whenever I say that, I think people have this image of, you know, they think about the grime music and all that sort of stuff in a council flat. I grew up in a house, and my parents had a property portfolio, and they were very successful. And so for me, it wasn't even a case of, oh, I'm from East London and, you know, what? No, that is not my story. And, you know, I'm writing a book and I'm explaining that, because I think people do have this image of, if you are from a particular part of the world or from a particular part of London, automatically you're being stereotyped. And so even though I'm from East London, I was born and raised in Leytonstone, we always lived in a nice house, and my parents developed a property portfolio. So I can't even say that, oh, well, there was other people in East London who were doing better than me. No, because I had a really nice upbringing. I had a blessed upbringing. I had the opportunity to go to a private school, but I ended up going to a really good Catholic school in Woodford Green, which your husband went to, and now he's a doctor, you know, so lots of good people went to that school. So I don't even see, you know, my background or the fact that I'm from East London as something that's a negative. For me, it's a positive. And if anything, it's the positive because I also had the opportunity to network with others. So when I went to primary school, yes, I had friends that lived in a council flat and their birthday parties would be there, but it gave me the opportunity to actually see how everyone lives, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I am who I am today, and why I've launched my charity to help everyone to become a success. And that's what I'm about. I'm about creating a platform so that everyone can succeed. There is no big secret, you know, and I'm hoping everyone on here, you're probably already very successful, and it's just nice to create that positivity and exchange that warmth. But for those that are looking to aspire to be someone, and maybe you come from a background that isn't so positive, but I'm all about positivity, you know, even in current times, we can turn this around and it can be positive. We don't know what things are going to be looking like post COVID-19, but we have to make the best of it. You know, we have to stay positive, and that's something that has really helped me get through everything and anything that I've faced within my life.
Brilliant. So there are a few things I have to say. You may have noticed my daughter keeps coming in and out. It's because I'm home alone with them. My husband is off on night, so he's gone to work. So it's just me and the kid. So, you know, I don't want to apologize for the interruption. They should be better trained, but I haven't trained them because it's a lockdown.
Don't worry about that.
So that's what we're having to deal with. That's what we're having to deal with. So my sincere apologies. And also, if you have any questions for Miranda, you can type into the chat box and I will read them to her so that we can get through as many questions as possible before the end.
Definitely, because I really want this to be an interaction as well. So
yes,
let's make this as interactive as we possibly can.
Okay, so Miranda, you have a fabulous network. You just got a book deal with, is it HarperCollins? Yes, okay, yes. So
we will wait, but all of this is network. And one of the key things that I say is the importance of your network. How did you and I meet? We met through your husband, who I went to school with on the tube. You know, when you finished, and you're so humble, you didn't even mention that you finished the marathon. That's how we met. Yes. So, you know, it's all about network. How did I get into the city? How did I get into banking? Through my mother, through my network. How did I get my book deal with the third largest book publisher? Through a network. And funny enough, it was being listed in the Financial Times, most influential global business executives. And I met the general counsel of HarperCollins there. And this was 3-4 years ago. And we became friends, and I mentioned my book. I went to give a talk to HarperCollins, to their Black network and various other diverse networks. And I was saying for 2-3 years, you know, I'm writing a book. And finally, the book is coming. And within the book, you will learn why it took a while. Hopefully, if I'm brave enough to share that, if I would dare to reveal why. But it's all about your network, and that's how the book deal came about. That's how most things come about in terms of even my board roles. One of the board roles I had was being vice chair of the Black Cultural Archives, which your husband's family, as you mentioned, was featured. Like, yes. How crazy is that? Like, look at this.
It's a very small one.
Why don't you share the story? Because I only learned this last week when you told me.
Right. It's a long story. I think anybody, I don't think the people on the call want to hear about that. But basically, if you went to the Black Cultural Archives in Peckham, there's a family tree.
It's Brixton. They're in Brixton.
And Brixton, yes. So there's a family tree of my family and the history right down from now.
And your husband's family, who are kings and queens in Africa.
Yes.
And I used to be the vice chair of the Black Cultural Archives. But how did that board role occur? It was through networking. So when I worked for a top US investment bank, I was chair of their Black networking group. And this all comes down to the networks. I was chair of their Black networking group, and to help with the progression of the Black employees there. I then left, but I was still invited. And then Doreen Lawrence was giving a talk, and I think she had a book or she was launching a charity. There was something going on there. And so I attended. And there was a mature lady in the corner not talking to anyone. And I'm a big fan of, if you see someone feeling uncomfortable and they're on their own, go and talk to them. And that's what I did. And she ended up being the chair of the Black Cultural Archives. And we kept in contact. 2 years later, She then asked me if I would like to join the board. I ended up being the vice chair of the board of trustees for the Black Cultural Archives. And if you don't know about this organisation, I definitely recommend that you Google it, go and see it. It's all about celebrating the Black British history and the contributions of Black British people, the contributions that we've made to this country. And that's how I got one of, the initial early board roles that I've done. So it's really important to embrace your networks. It's really important to, when we go to events, whether it's a women's event or a diverse event, I'm a big fan of looking at who are the people that are struggling, who are the introverts that aren't comfortable talking to people, and going out there and reaching out and making them feel welcome. I think that's so important when we're talking about networks. And this is a networking platform. Forward
Yes.
Ladies is a networking platform. I think it's really important to be mindful of that.
Yes.
Anyway,
and I have to say, Miranda's so you all know I meet a lot of people in my work. Miranda is one of the few people, and I can just remember a handful of people who have persistently asked for my kids, their names and their date of birth, because she wants to find a way to just keep that connection real. And I think what you do that is so different from what others do is that you give value in relationships. So you're always finding a way to add value, to support. Whereas I think a lot of people look at what they can get out of the relationship. And when you start by looking at what you can get out of the relationship, then, that's it. It's dead. But one of the things I'm realizing with COVID currently is that even though we are stuck at home, there is so much networking that we can still be doing. But I don't think people are picking up the phone and calling people, either because we're not feeling we're in the right headspace, or simply because we don't feel it's right to call people now. I know that we have been through a situation where I really appreciated phone calls from the people I knew within my network, because we were unwell as a family. So if you are on this network, you're in lockdown, you're probably feeling miserable and depressed like the whole world is, because we are all human.
No, positivity. Come on, let's raise it up.
It's okay. It's okay.
We'll have some positivity.
Yes, we will. It's okay to feel down as well, but the important thing is that you don't stay there. So you can still reach out. There's so many fantastic women within this network who are needing support at this point in time that you can reach out to. You always have something to give. It can be your time. Some people have money. They can donate to charities and causes they support. Some people have their positivity, like Miranda. She can raise the roof just on her energy. And we really do need people like that to step up, because I think a lot of people are really struggling with the situation currently.
Yes.
So we have a question from Sarah. So Sarah wants to know how you went about finding board positions alongside working full time.
Well, in fact, the first board position I had, so 10 years ago was when I first started my board position, but just 10 years, well, under 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I was a sales trader, a hedge fund sales trader for a big global investment bank. And then I left because I had finished my legal qualifications and I wanted to then progress into that area. But one of the things I did was I wanted to take 6 months out at least to think about what direction am I going into. And I think it's really important. And that's one of the positives that we can take out of this lockdown. We've got an opportunity, and I know we're working from home and there's a lot going on and we're having to manage the childcare and homeschooling, but maybe amongst all of that, we can somehow find some time. But for me, I found my first board role when I removed myself from the trading floor. I then launched my own legal consultancy company, and it was my mother. Like, my mother, once again, my mentor, she's the one that said, why don't you try banking? I was like, what? And she was the one that said to me, why don't you try to do some board work? You've got such great experience. And I found a role working for a charity, and I applied, went for the interview, got the role, and that was my first board role about 10 years ago. But I wasn't juggling the board role with a full-time job at that point, because I was taking time out, because I'd been in banking since I was 18. And this was at the time, this was in 2012, early 2012. And so this was when I had colleagues who had always been in banking since they'd graduated university, and they were in their 40s and 50s. And I just thought, do I really want to spend my whole career working for a bank or in the banking sector or in the financial sector? I really wanted to take some time out to think about the direction that I'm going in. And also, I was really passionate about giving back and how can I help with the knowledge. And I was in a comfortable financial position as well in order to do that. And so that's what I did. I also became a global poverty ambassador, UK global poverty ambassador, working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I had the opportunity to meet Bill Gates as well and talk to him about charity. And I think it's through those connections and networks that inspired me to continue along my charity route. Through launching my legal consultancy company, which was Pluto Law Limited, I then ended up working for top US investment banks through my network, and also hiring others that I knew within my network to work, and I would assign them roles. And then I ended up getting a role for a Japanese investment bank. And that was the end of my legal consultancy career, because they then wanted to make me permanent. I ended up leading a few areas, including financial regulations across Europe for that. And it was during that transition, which was about 7 years ago, that I then started to manage the portfolio career that I had, which naturally came about. And I'm a big fan of portfolio careers. So I then had a full-time job leading a legal section, qualifying in the evenings to be a barrister. I'd done that, being called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn.
Insane.
And then I was doing my board role. So I was also doing patron roles as well. And I'm a big fan of giving back to places where I've studied. And I was asked to, I did my MBA at the University of Westminster. And the Vice Chancellor, who has sadly passed away now, but at the time, he invited me to be the keynote speaker for their 20th anniversary of the business school. And it was during that time that he also asked if I could be the first patron for the Black British academics. And so I've always been involved in diversity. And whenever people ask me the question about how did you get involved in diversity, I've always been involved in diversity. And it's been over 20 years, working for a German investment bank, just attending women's networking events, to, chairing a Black networking group at a top US investment bank, to then, being more directly involved in terms of helping to change an industry, working with the City of London, working within London, and then eventually launching my own charity, the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation. And that came around purely by accident. So while working full-time, while doing board roles, while being the first patron of the Black British Academics, the vice chair of the Black Cultural Archives, and also then I got involved with Cancer Research UK, and they had a Women of Influence board. And it was through, once again, a network where a friend of mine who also leads a major women's networking group, she mentioned that she was on the board of Cancer Research UK. I was like, would love to know more about it. She introduced me to that board. So it comes back to the value of networks and introducing other women to that. I then joined the board. We helped to raise nearly £1 million for cancer research. I also interviewed for breast cancer care, and I was on the board for that for a while. And the reason why I joined that board was to help to diversify the number of people that they were actually targeting, because there weren't enough people from the ethnic minority community that were in touch with the breast cancer care community. So that's one of the things that I was doing, to use my network, my media network as well. And so when people ask, how did you launch your own charity while working full time? It was purely by accident. The reason why I launched it is because being involved in diversity for so long, I was involved in women's networks, race diversity networks, or ethnic minority, whatever you want to call it, LGBT as an ally, and so on. And I was just frustrated back in 2015. There was just not enough action when we talk about race diversity. And so I decided to launch one scholarship focused on Blacks, Asians, and minority ethnics, 14 to 21. And the reason why I did that was because working in the corporate sector since I was 18, I felt that the focus was more on those that were in the workplace. You've done your degree, you know you want to be a lawyer or a barrister or a banker or an accountant or whatever, or a consultant, and you're in there, and then you start to be part of the network. And I realized that we have a pipeline issue. And I was thinking, how do we solve this diversity issue? What do we need to do? How do we close the pipeline diversity gap? We need to start earlier. We need to start engaging with those that are still at school, at university. We need to raise aspirations. We need to raise confidence. And so I back then, I was public speaking. I was also traveling all around the world, all different continents, Africa, Asia, you know, Europe, the US, you name it. I was everywhere talking not only about diversity, but my story and everything else. And so I felt, how can I use all of these networks and everything to help? And I was getting the next generation emailing me, can you please mentor? Can you help me with work experience? And I was getting hundreds of emails, and I did not have the capacity to individually help every single person. So I said, I'm going to launch a scholarship, one scholarship. I'll self-fund it. I'll help this one person with mentoring, and I'll also help them with the work experience. And so I went back to my old law school, the University of Law, and I said, look, I've also got another idea. While I'm launching this one scholarship, I would also like to launch a diversity lecture to help engage and empower and educate our next generation on what is really going on with diversity. Because you hear so many people of my age group, younger, older, and they say, I had no idea about, you know, the discrimination or the lack of diversity in the workplace. I really wanted to close that gap. And after talking to friends, I ended up getting lots of money and support. And I thought, well, let me launch a foundation. Hence, the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation was born. We made UK history with the diversity lecture. And so it's really important that I think to be a leader, when you're thinking about leadership, you're not just managing a team. I've managed teams. It's not just about managing, it's about giving back. And I always emphasize the importance. And you mentioned, you know, the fact that I made notes of your children's birthdays and things. I really think it's important that when you are talking about networking, it's important to see relationships as investments, you know, and it's important to think about, how can I give back? How can I help? And I'm a big fan of, especially in light of what's going on globally right now, how can we give back? How can we make the world a better place? And I don't want to sound corny, but from the heart, this is how I think. I always think, how can I help someone? And that's essentially how I decided to launch the foundation. And that's why now, during lockdown, I've spent a lot of my time writing my book, which will hopefully help more leaders, more future leaders, more current leaders, and more existing leaders in terms of how can we help not only ourselves to become more successful, but how can we help others to become more successful? And I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of sharing knowledge and helping others. And I think that's the only way that we're really all going to get to the same place. That's the only way that we're going to close the diversity gap. That's the only reason why platforms like Forward Ladies exist, because there's a need and there's a requirement for that. And it's important that us ladies, we stick together, we support each other, and we help each other. You know, there's no competition. There's enough room for everyone, and we have to help each other. There's strength in numbers, you know?
Absolutely, there is absolute strength in numbers. So I just wanted to hit on a few things you said. If you're on this call, you're thinking you have the capacity, you have the experience to contribute to either Miranda's Leadership Foundation, or I myself have a scholarship that I give locally at Leeds Beckett University. It is super easy to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is super easy to do these things, because I think sometimes we look at things happening in the wider world and we think, oh, you have to be up there to do it. You know, you can start from right where you are. And for me, the university, the local university, because I sat on the advisory board, again, came through networks, you know, so your networks are so important. They said, we have some brilliant students this year that we feel they really need an award, and we feel that your organization will be a fantastic one to give the scholarship to them. And they said, you just give this amount and then we'll set it all up. And that was what I did. And at that point, when they asked me, I didn't think I was someone ready to give anybody scholarship, let alone at a university. So I think a lot of us can start doing those things, particularly if you have a passion for your sector, you have a passion for a specific topic or industry. Now, myself, I give scholarship to women because of my mother's journey, and I love women's development because of Forward Ladies. But also I have a passion for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. I have a passion for supporting women in male-dominated sectors. And I also have a real passion for Black and ethnic minorities. Now, you may be looking at Miranda thinking, initially when I met Miranda, I couldn't box her because she doesn't really fit into any box. But she identifies as Black because of her heritage. And so she's doing a lot to support that.
Correction. No, I identify as mixed race.
Okay.
But as we all know, when we look at the one drop rule, you know, but when it comes down to, you know, but for me, I'm half Asian and I am very proud of that. But on my mother's side, she's from the Caribbean, but she's mixed. So she's got French and English. So I'm Black, white, Asian. So for me, what I don't want to do is say, oh, I'm Black, because then it's like, well, what about the Asian side? What about the French?
Yeah.
So for me, and this is why I launched the Diversity Foundation, because for me, I'm about all races succeeding,
yes.
You know? But as we all know, if someone looks at me, they're going to probably see me as that Black lady, as opposed to the mixed race lady. Or they're going to think I'm half Black, half white, and not realise that I've actually got some Asian in there as well. And in fact, I'm half Asian. I'm more Asian than I am Black or white. So for me, I really wanted just to make that acknowledgement, because I don't want my father's family to feel away that I'm, you know, not acknowledging that. And I think this is something that I'm writing in my book about, you know, what does it mean to be mixed race? And I'm currently being featured, and this is going to be a permanent fixture, at the Guildhall Art Gallery. And one of the things they did an exhibition. You can see it online. It's on my various social media sites. But they chose 10 women within the City of London who are doing great things, and they featured them. They did a photography exhibition, and it was Hannah Starkley, who's a very well-known photographer, and she featured 10 women from all different walks of life. So some are lawyers like myself or bankers like myself, but others might work in a coffee shop or might be a cleaner. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge everyone. I think that's one of the things that the COVID-19 is actually doing. It's actually acknowledging, and when you think about the people who are actually keeping the country running, well, we're all inside working from home, those that can. It's, you know, it is the NHS staff. It's the people that are collecting our rubbish. It's the people that are delivering our post. You know, it's the cleaners. So it's really important for us to acknowledge all of that and to realise we're all in this together, and we're all, you know, a network. Yeah.
We've got some questions coming in. I just love that people are replying to some of the questions themselves. So thank you so much for doing that. So in response to your question, yes, this session is being recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel, hopefully tomorrow, or we are a bit slow and understaffed with COVID. So it should be live on the site as soon as we are able to. There's a question for you, Miranda, about your biggest lesson. What have you learned from your biggest? Where is that? I think I saw that question. Yes. What career error has taught you the biggest lesson? And that's from Evelyn.
Good question.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's been a career error, because every single step that I have made has helped me get to where I am today. So I'm not the kind of person that sits back and thinks about regrets or thinks, oh, I should have done this or that. No, because literally every single thing that I've done has helped me get to where I am today, and I'm very happy with where I am today. So I don't feel that I've made any career errors. In terms of what lessons, or what's the lesson that I've learned, I think the lesson that I've learned throughout, and this is what was instilled in me as a child, is to believe in yourself, the confidence. And that's one of the lessons. Like, you know, I mentioned I haven't really had imposter syndrome many times, and I had it probably in the earlier years. And one of the things that, you know, I learned is to believe in myself, to be authentic. And when I first started the workplace, I did feel that I had to conform. And I can recall, you know, some of the advice that I was given was, you know, keep your mouth shut, put your head down. And, you know, and I tried to do that. And I realized that I was not happy. And I actually started thinking, well, is this banking career really for me? Because I feel that I can't be myself. And then I decided to be authentic, be real, and be myself. And that's when I started to enjoy my work. And that's when I started to progress and get promoted. So I think the main lesson that I've learned is just to be yourself, be authentic, be brave, you know, dare to be yourself, and success will follow, you know, because so many people, I feel, listen to other opinions. And if you listen to all these different opinions and what everyone else thinks, and no, you can't do that, or no one from your background has achieved that, or, you know, if I'd listened to opinions, I would not have been a sales trader on the trading floor working for one of the world's biggest global investment banks. I wouldn't have been a top senior lawyer working for an investment bank in the City of London. And so I think it's really important to believe in yourself, to trust yourself, and pray. I'm a big fan of spiritual feng shui, prayer, you know, but just to believe in yourself. I think that's the biggest lesson. And sometimes, you know, I'm human. Sometimes we'll enter something and we'll be like, oh my God, you know, should I have taken this step? But I think, you know, law of attraction, visualizing, and believing in yourself, all of these are important lessons. And that's what's helped me get through and get to where I am today. And I have peace of mind to know that I'm happy. And I think for me, that's one of the ultimate goals in terms of life and success. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great response. I think one of the mistakes that I realize I have made is never thinking big enough, because you know, it's a huge aspirational gap. No matter how successful you are, there is always the opportunity to do more than you ever imagined possible. But I think we put the lid on ourselves because we think, you know, this is all that we can achieve. So if you're wondering what is the mistake that you can avoid, is I'll tell you to be really bold, to be really courageous, and always go for that job that you really want, that opportunity that you really want. Don't try and rationalize it to your reality and say that's what I'm deserving of, because you'll be surprised what you can, I won't say get away with, but you'll be surprised what can come to fruition if you're bold and courageous enough, if you're bold enough to ask for it. Right.
And that is my motto. My motto is, if you don't ask, you don't get. And whether that's, you know, that job or that pay rise, that promotion, whatever that is, ask. And you know what? Sometimes you'll ask and the answer will be no. Do not take no for an answer. Right. Do not quit. Do not give up.
Okay, so there's another thing I'd like to ask you about, and it's about negotiation, because I remember you made a comment. You said, what? Yes, negotiating your salary. We have to talk about that very quickly. Would tell us what your strategy has been around that.
So I think whenever you're negotiating a salary, it's important to do your own research, do your market research, and that's what I've done. Whether that's, you know, me working as a manager, a leader, nearly 20 years ago when I first started my leadership management career working for a top investment bank, and going through the interview process and the performance management process, and hiring someone older than me, and they want more money than me. And I thought, well, hold on, even if you're older than me, I'm going to be managing you. Why are you on more money than me? And going to my manager and saying, hey, what's going on here? And then getting a pay rise. And so I think it's really important to do the research, but also if you are going into your mid-year or your end-of-year appraisal, or you're even negotiating a new role for a new company, it's important to know your worth, know your value, know what are you bringing to the table, and don't sell yourself short. And so research, research, research. What is your role? What are other women? And I think it's really important that women share this sort of information, you know, and men as well. And I've been in situations where I've had male friends tell me, well, I'm on X money, and I'm like, what? Okay, done. And then I just find through my own personal experience that sometimes women aren't so open in terms of sharing. And I know sometimes it's not something you do want to talk about, but I think do your research. So even if you don't want to share what you're on or anything like that, do your research. And you can go on Glassdoor. There are so many things on the internet now. There is no excuse for you to do research and find out and talk to headhunters. You know, you can develop relationships with headhunters, whether you're hiring or you're just looking to do some research, and find out in terms of the position that you want to do, what is the going rate, so that when you are negotiating for a role or you are looking for a pay rise, you're able to provide some market research. But not only market research, it's important to look at what are you bringing to the table. So if it is your mid-year or your end-of-year appraisal, I always used to have a separate folder, and anytime I'd get praise or anything, anytime I would do anything, that would go in there. So when it gets to your end of year or your mid-year, you can go into that folder and you've got all these examples. And I guess this is the barrister in me, you know, the lawyer in me with the evidence. It's important for you to have your evidence so that you're able to say, you know, I've been doing X, Y, and Z. I deserve that pay rise. I deserve that promotion, and this is why. And this comes back to sponsorship and mentorship. And no one becomes successful on their own. And this is the importance of your network, a team, whether it's a mentor, a sponsor, someone to speak up for you when you're not in the room, someone to recommend that you join a board. And I think that's really important. I'm a big fan of how do we close the diversity gap, not just in terms of the pipeline issue and getting the next generation in the system, but how do we close the diversity gap within the FTSE 100 board, within the boards of most organisations? How do we diversify that? And I think that it all comes back to the networks. It all comes back to believing in yourself and knowing that you deserve that place at the table. And what are you going to do to get there, and not taking no for an answer? And when you are there or you're halfway there, what can you be doing to help others that are trying to get there, get to that situation? Because that's the only way that we're really going to close the diversity gap at a faster pace. And maybe if you buy my book,
a sales plug there, that's okay. I've already told you, Miranda, when your book is launched, I will help you promote it. I just love, one of the things I love about Miranda is her boldness, her in your face, I'm here, I'm visible, I'm owning this space, and I don't need you to love me, I don't need you to like me, but I have something to contribute. And one of the things when I talked to her earlier, I said, Miranda, when people see that, they think you have it all, you seem perfect, you're doing well. But what you don't see is that she's so authentic and she's so people driven, and she's had to develop a way of working that has gotten her here, but that hasn't changed who she is, you know, who you are at the core. And that's just absolutely what I love about you, because I go on Facebook and I see you and I say, rocket girl. And because we don't have enough women doing that. People are so apologetic.
Or enough women of colour. And that's something else I want to address. You know, when we talk about gender diversity or race diversity, and you know, we've got Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook talking about lean in, and women are leaning in, you know, and sometimes that's not enough. What else can we be doing? And it's for organizations to change, but also we have to acknowledge that women of color have it tough. You know, not only are you a woman, but you're a person of color. Not only do we have the gender pay gap, but we've got the race pay gap. Yeah. What are we doing? You know, we need to make that mandatory. And so there are so many things that we need to do, but I equally love you too. And I think you're amazing. And it's funny because I get so much love on social media. I get so many emails, and people love the boldness. People love the confidence. Yes, I wish I could be like you. And I'm like, you can. You know, I've got people like, I want to be the next Miranda Brawn. I'm like, no, be the next you, you know, like embrace who you are, love who you are. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about accepting who you are, loving who you are, and let's just create this community. Let's create this family where we can help each other. That's all what I'm about.
Gosh, we're running out of time. We have a few more questions, but I think what we will do is, if we're not able to get through all the questions, I'll pop them over to Miranda, and you can just shoot me back some answers, and we'll publish it alongside the video.
Done.
I'm just conscious that when it gets longer than an hour, people tend to switch off after a while. So I'll just take one last question about leadership. So what's influenced your leadership style?
What's influenced my leadership style?
Yes. Have you developed that? Because you started very early and you've developed that over time. So what influenced that?
I think for me, really, I've grown up in a male-dominated environment. As a child, I was the only female cousin for 11 years. So even as a child, I was a tomboy. So entering a male-dominated environment didn't faze me, because I was used to, elbowing my way into a position. And so for me, I think in terms of how has my leadership developed, I've mentioned this earlier on in this session. It's just being true to who I really am, and it's coming back to that genuine need of helping and wanting to give back on a genuine level. In fact, all of my diversity work, all of my charity work, I don't financially benefit from anything. And so, when you see me on TV, or you see me writing an article about diversity, or I'm on the radio, I always say, can you contribute that donation towards the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation, or can you contribute it towards, a charity that I believe in? Because I believe that, I've got my investments and I've got my other income. And then when you are giving back and when you are looking at leadership, I think it's really important that leadership should be about empowering. It should be about educating. It should be about inspiring. And if it's anything else other than that, then you need to look within yourself and think, am I really a leader? Am I really a leader? What am I really trying to do? And for me, it's just coming from a pure, genuine, loving platform in terms of how can I make a difference in the world. And as corny as this sounds, how can I make the world a better place? And that's how I form my leadership. And whether I'm in the workplace or out of the workplace, in a charity boardroom, in a corporate boardroom, whatever boardroom or whatever situation I'm in, I always stay true to who I am. And I think that is key in terms of when you look at who are the top leaders, who are the leaders that you respect. They are people, even when no one else believed in what they were saying, they stood their ground, and eventually people caught up. They were ahead of their time. And it's funny because, there was this social media on Instagram, especially me at 20, and I posted my me at 20, and some comments were, you were ahead of your time back then. I posted me at 26, working for a top US investment bank as vice chair of a Black networking group. And I just think it's really important. And one of the things that I instill with my mentees when I'm mentoring and doing my coaching is and this is why the Miranda Brawn Diversity Leadership Foundation platform exists, because we want to teach our future leaders how to be leaders. How can they actually teach themselves how to fish? It's not, here's a fish you can eat for today. It's how can you help yourself and how can you help others? And whether that's you finish university, you've started work, or maybe you've left school and you're at university, how can you help someone a few years younger than you? It's all about, and you mentioned this in this session, you don't have to be at the top of your game in order to give back. You might just be a few years ahead of someone else, and you can mentor, you can coach. Or it could be something as simple as, your company or your board are hiring, and they might be having some problems in terms of diversifying that role. This is where you can use your voice. I'm a big fan. I'm also talking about this in my book in terms of how you can use your voice. Your voice is your power, and how you can use your voice to say, here's a CV. Use your network. I keep going back to that because it's so important. Use your network in terms of how you can help other women. And there are some fantastic women who have helped me. They've sent me their CVs and said, look, I've had these board roles and, you know, netball roles, and this is what I've done, this is, you know, what I've got. And I think it's really important that we develop a space where we're able to share and help each other. And that's what I hope that we're going to achieve through tonight's session.
That's what we're all about, and I'm sure everybody on the call is here because they are looking for that. So just as a very quick reminder, this is a webinar hosted by Forward Ladies. As you know, we're a membership organization. A lot of the content that we give out is free. Currently during the quarantine, I'm hosting weekly quarantine well-being sessions over on Instagram. So if you use Instagram, you find me there every week with an expert just talking through how they're getting through the quarantine. In addition to that, we do the In Conversation With over on the website every month. And the next one, we have another fantastic female leader coming to share her story. And in addition to that, for our premium members, we have premium members only webinars. So that'll be, again, myself and another expert really just digging deeper into some of the things we talk about. So if you're not already a member, I really advise you to take a look. If you like what we're doing, please share, get people to connect with the work we're doing, because we need every single woman to be owning the space she is in and to be using her voice to really change it. I will keep shouting, I'll keep screaming from Yorkshire, where I'm based, and I'm sure Miranda is doing the same from East London, and we just feel like
I'm actually in West London, but
you're
also
in West London now.
We have to get the men involved. It's so important, because I gave a TEDx talk 2 years ago in Italy, and one of the things I said was, as one of my key messages in terms of how do we change the world, is all about togetherness. But when we're talking about gender diversity, we need to get the men involved. When we're talking about race diversity, we need to get those that, you know, that aren't from people of colour and that sort of background. When we're talking about LGBT, we need those that aren't from that background. Disability, social mobility, that's the only way we're all going to come together. And so when we are talking about, you know, gender diversity and having women, and that's why when I was sharing this session, I was saying ladies and gentlemen, I was inviting the men to come to this, because we need to have men coming to these webinars. We need to have them to be the voice, because a lot of the time it's still men who are the ones deciding who's getting promoted, who's getting that pay rise. So we need them to come onto these platforms and listen to understand how can they also help to make a change within the workplace and make a change within the culture, and help women and those from diverse backgrounds, women of colour including myself and yourself. How do we get to the top? That's what we're about.
So thank you so much, Molly. I know you're desperate to have Molly, I know you're desperate to have your question answered, but I think we've run out of time. So I will be passing that on to Miranda, and she'll be getting in touch with you.
I will definitely be answering.
Thank you. And last thing, what's the book you're reading right now?
I'm actually reading two. I actually read more than one book. Principles, Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio, yes.
My dear friend, John Bercow.
Oh, fantastic.
And he actually hosted, in his last summer last year, he hosted our first summer event at the Speaker's House. So I'm a big fan of reading about autobiographies. And this is one of the things that I used to do in terms of lessons learned. Whenever I was in a room, I would go to the most successful person in my 20s. How did you get to where you are? And I just love reading about people who have achieved a certain level of success, leadership books. And I never read just one book. I've got a book on my phone. You know, I'm always reading, and that's another key to success. And check out my book for more success tips.
Thank you all so much. I hope you stay safe and well with your family. Yes. We're praying for you. We're sending love. We're in this together. So if
yes,
reach out.
Stay safe. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to hang out tonight.
Thank you so much, Miranda. Thank you, everyone. Take good care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.